The new Flat Rate Podcast.
The new flat rate!
For contractors ready to boost tickets, simplify business, and gain freedom. Before we dive in, a quick word from an incredible event you won't want to miss. The Freedom Builders University Growth Summit. Build a business that runs without you. Happening this September 18th through 19th. Imagine stepping into a company that's not just talking about growth, but actually living it. Join us for this 2-day workshop inside Platinum Plumbing in Shreveport, Louisiana, a TNFR trained business built for process, profit, and performance. Seats are limited, so register now by calling 706-259-8892 or visiting freedombuildersuniversity.com/FBU-events. Today, we sat down with Steve Caton, the founder and CEO of Altezza Solutions. And now, your host, Danielle Putnam.
I'm Danielle Putnam, CEO of the New Flat Rate, and with me today is Steve Caton, the founder and CEO of Altezza Solutions. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Danielle. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. And it's fun that although we're not in the same room right now, same space, we are both in the same great state of Georgia, and it's very easy to see based on your shelf right behind you.
Amen. That's right. Got to represent the state of Georgia and the Georgia Bulldogs as much as I possibly can.
You know, what's funny, Steve, is when I got married, I guess we were newly dating, and one of the first couple dates, it happened to be fall, and so it's football season, so we meet up, and there's like games on everywhere, and I was like, so who's our team? And my husband's like, yes. He was so excited. He's like, oh, good, she gets to be in my team. And so right away, it was Florida State. And so I remember one day I posted a post on social, and I said, oh, yeah, you know, such and such, we're watching the Florida game. And he was like, take that down, take that down, take that down. I was like, what? I thought we were Florida. He's like, Florida State. I was like, I now know.
Yeah, huge difference, right? That was a mistake only made one time, right?
I never made it again. And then I learned a lot. And then I know this show is not about me, it is about you. But the first year of our marriage, I was very confused when I realized, wait a minute, why are we boosters? Why are we season ticket holders to a school that's not in our state that we did not go to? And we're going every week on, like, I didn't understand it all. But now life has settled in and I have all the gear. I have all the golden garnet.
Well, I'm so glad it's not orange and blue.
I know, right?
That
I
would
bought
be
the
a
right
problem.
color. I
Yeah,
bought the right color.
yeah.
But let's talk about you because I've got this wonderful new executive assistant, and she handed me a really cool piece of paper with all of your information on it before our call today. And
Oh,
one thing that I was interested in is law school. You went to law school?
no, I did not go to law school.
Hey, I'm glad I asked on air because you also attended the University of Georgia Law School.
That's weird. Did she get that off of LinkedIn?
You know what? You can't believe everything that you read online, can you?
I know I got to go and look for that one. I've never been accused of going to law school.
Well, I'm glad that I mentioned it because I didn't understand how that went into Altezza Solutions.
Right?
But if you don't mind doing a short introduction and tell everybody who you are and what it is that Altezza does.
Yeah, thanks. So basically, I'm a Georgia guy. Grew up here. Wasn't born here, but I was raised here. So I take credit for that. And I went to University of Georgia, and so I'm a huge Bulldog guy. And like you, my wife is someone that was quickly indoctrinated into the Georgia way as soon as we met. In fact, going to a Georgia game was our first date.
Wow,
Which
that's a
was
big first date.
that was a strategic move on my part. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the thing that's probably relevant for the audience is to know that I've basically been in sales my whole life. It's all I've ever done, and I've made a lot of mistakes. I got all the scar tissue to show for it. But one of the things that I learned about myself early on, I'd say probably early 30s, mid 30s, probably. I learned that I have this entrepreneurial kind of wiring. So what that
Mhm,
meant for me was I couldn't survive very long in large companies that had a lot of process and policy and
mhm,
all the rules, right? I just didn't do well there. I needed to be in more innovative,
You wanted to create.
creative organizations, right? So
Mhm.
I was drawn to early stage growth companies, and I just decided that's where I wanted to live. So think in terms of dot coms in the late
Mhm.
90s and that sort of thing. And then so I did sales for companies like that, and then I did some consulting with companies like that, and I saw this pattern over and over again with these companies, and that is when they went and they were trying to transition from kind of founder-led sales to
Mhm.
actually bringing in real salespeople. It was a very difficult transition to make, and so it planted this seed in me years ago, Danielle, that someday I want to start a company to fix that problem.
Mm.
But I had to wait for my kids to get out of college and all that good
Interesting.
stuff. And
Yeah,
when that finally happened, guess what? It was in the middle of a pandemic, as fate
of
would have
course it
it.
was.
Yeah, I mean, what's up with the timing there? But
Yeah.
it turned out, honestly, that that was a good thing because what happened in the pandemic, as you know, is we all had to get used to this virtual workforce thing. So I think one of the last roles that people thought could be done effectively from a fractional standpoint or a virtual standpoint was sales.
Mm.
But because we were all living there, there was some openness to it. So I started the company right at the end of 2020,
Wow.
and then it just grew from there. But essentially, what Altezza is doing is, we're doing fractional sales execution so that founders can get out of the sales trap and start working on the things that are going to give them freedom, right? Because they all want to grow their business for,
Mhm.
usually it's about freedom financially,
Of
freedom
course.
personally, freedom to
Mm.
spend time with their family, but they're not going to experience that freedom if they're trapped in the sales grind. So we try to release them from that trap and give them the freedom to go do the things that only they can do within the context of their business.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, that's a big deal. I love how the seed was planted years before you
Mm,
actually founded the company, but the journey had started. And so you had the vision and the idea, and you were waiting for the timing. Is there anything you were doing there when you're like, hey, someday I'm going to? Like, of course, all your experiences played a big role in that, I'm sure.
yeah.
But were you preparing for the start of your business ahead of that time or no?
Oh no, you know what? If I'm to be honest, I had to get through some head trash
Sure.
first. So there was a long period of time where I didn't think I had what it took to be a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of lived in that head trash. I always thought, oh, I'm a great number two guy,
Mhm.
but I'm not the number one guy. I'm not the visionary. But I had some really, cool mentors in my life that challenged me on that thinking and
Yeah.
said, bro, you need to get over that. And so I have after a while, the message started to take root.
Mhm.
And then that, I think, coupled with just life change that happens as we get older, and you become more reflective on legacy and things like that, I decided, you know what? I'm going to stop listening to the head trash and actually take the leap of faith on that.
Ah, I love that. It's so relevant. I've got a mentor who I kept rehashing the same issue in life with this mentor. And finally, one day he says, Danielle, I'm done talking about it.
Mm,
And it hit me so hard. I was like, oh, like, oh, like I'm done talking about it. So I've told you what to do. You're not doing it. You know what to do. So don't talk to me about it anymore. And I needed that push. I needed that nudge, that accountability of somebody really taking that stance. And you don't get to just vomit on me. Like, grow up. I was like, all right. And so, of course, I did. Right.
yeah.
But that was kind of a painful little stab, but so thankful for mentors that can help us through things like that to
Oh
get,
man.
to get
Yeah.
past your head trash because they were right. You
Yep.
could do it. Right.
That's
Um,
right.
very cool. All right. So talking about founders, at the New Flat Rate, most people that we work with are contractors. They're business owners, heating and air, electrical, and plumbing. And so we have small companies, big companies in membership with us all over the U.S., Canada, and Australia. And so many of these founders are still owner operators.
Yep.
And so think of whether it's one man truck, two trucks, three trucks, four trucks, right? They're still going out in the field. They're still serving the customers, but so often, Steve, they're doing it because they are the best salesperson. And
Yep.
so what you're the sales that we're talking about here, it's very relevant for our audience today. And so I'd love to talk very specifically about this. So they're going out, they're turning the wrenches, they're doing the job because they have, whether it's the skill, the finesse, or the care, the drive to really be able to serve the customers, to offer more, and they know that they need to bring in more revenue for the business. And
Yeah.
so, or they might just be working way more hours than everybody else and bringing in more revenue. There's a lot of different ways that they're bringing in revenue.
Yeah.
But at the point that a founder and owner is like, all right, I've got to get out of the truck and start working on the business instead of in the business, they might not even know that they need to do that, but there's burnout happening, there's not freedom happening, right? And so, could you speak to that? How could a founder begin to know, whether in any industry, all right, I've been doing sales for X amount, how do they know when it's time to start making the step to the next level?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I love this conversation, and I want this to be really practical. So help me, Danielle, stay. I want to
Yeah.
keep it practical, not theoretical. So
Okay.
feel free to kind of push on me a little bit if I get a little bit too much into the theoretical. But here's what I've seen in terms of those patterns that I noticed, right? That I was talking about earlier. I kind of break it down into leading indicators and lagging indicators, right? And so the leading indicators that you will see happening in terms of what is going on. One
Hmm.
thing is going to be this multitasking thing that you were alluding to about they're in the
Yeah.
truck, they're doing all the things. There's this weird um, kind of mindset around multitasking that some of us are proud of. Like we become proud of our multitasking capabilities, as opposed
Yeah.
to realizing that the truth of multitasking is that when we do that, the studies have shown that we're 40 to 60% less effective at whatever it is we're doing than we are when we're focused.
I believe it.
So focus is absolutely critical, I think, for especially for founders. But when we multitask, we get a lot of stuff done, and it feels maybe really good at the end of the day because you checked off a lot of things from the to-do list. But in terms
Hmm.
of effectiveness and moving the business forward, it's not happening. And the way that'll show up is you're going to see a drop in revenue generating activities. So one of the things I became good at this early on, and some people do it, some people don't, but I actually color code my calendar so I know what kinds of activities I'm engaged in. So,
Okay.
so if I'm doing revenue generating activities, my calendar will show up as green for that activity. If I'm doing admin, that shows up as gray. If I'm doing operational stuff, that shows up as blue. If I'm doing strategic, kind of thinking, that shows up as purple. So I color code my calendar so I see at a glance how much time am I spending in revenue generating activities. And so what I saw and what I see with founders is the more multitasking they do, the more the tyranny of the urgent kind of shoves out the revenue generating activities and
Hmm.
replaces it with all the other colors that aren't going to create revenue for us, right? So that's
Yeah.
one of the things to look for too. And then the other thing that's really practical is if you think about deals being in a sales process, sales
Hmm.
opportunities, what'll happen is you'll see sales opportunities that will stall, and they'll stall usually early in the sales process, or they'll stall late in the sales process. So the most common places that deals will stall is early because you haven't really cemented the value proposition, and so the deal is just kind of stuck in the early stages. What's
Hmm.
more common is it gets stuck in the proposal stage because you kind of hurried through the sales conversation. You sent the proposal or the quote, and now you're waiting for them to sign and move forward. And it's just sitting in that stage, but you really haven't built the value proposition in the buyer's head.
Hmm.
So they're not moving forward because they're not compelled to do so, right? So you see
Yeah.
these deals just stack up, right? So
Ah.
those are things to look for that would
Hmm.
suggest that you're at that point where getting out of the sales role would be a good thing. The thing that you will feel, the thing to look for in terms of how you feel is stress and anxiety. It's like
Hmm.
you're feeling a lot of that stress and anxiety underlying, then that's also something to pay attention to as well. So those would be the leading indicators that I
Hmm.
would I would call attention to. Any questions about any of that before I talk about lagging
Well, it
indicators?
is so practical. Like take notes. Let's write this down, guys, and we'll put the notes, of course, in the show too, the show notes. So when your deals start to stack, it's an indicator.
Yep.
Color coding the calendar is brilliant. As you said that, I was like, ooh, I don't want to do that to mine. I don't want anybody to see how much time I'm wasting on tasks I should not be doing, right? I hate multitasking. I totally agree. It kills focus,
Yeah.
but we get stuck doing it and putting out fires, and I hate it. So I love the color coding. What a great way to start doing that. So a founder is on an HVAC call. They're running, they've got 10 calls today. They're running way too many. It's middle of summer. And to your point, they're saying, all right, you got an HVAC system, it's 10 years old, you should consider replacing it, yada, yada, yada. They leave a proposal, they walk out the door. What
Yeah.
we know about humans is that the confused mind says no.
That's right.
Confused mind says no. So this
Yep.
homeowner, the rapport wasn't built with them, whether it was an existing customer or a new customer. The value wasn't built because the founder, and this happens with technicians too, but the salesperson in the process was rushed, right? So there's no value built. And then there's confusion. Do I really need it? Do I not? Do I need to go get other quotes and other things, right? Because the time wasn't spent building up to that with the value. Then all of a sudden we've got this big old stack of proposals.
Yep.
And I feel like it is the number one miss in businesses is not following up on those leads, right? But it's
Oh yeah.
harder to follow up with them now because you can say, hey, you ready to move forward? Well, we didn't think about it because they didn't understand everything to begin with.
Yep. That's
If we
right.
would have spent more time on the front end, we wouldn't have to be following up on these leads that aren't going to move forward because we kind of killed the process there. You probably even have more eloquent words for that. But that's very relevant because when it comes to replacing a system and getting those piled up, and then the founder doesn't have time to go back after them.
Yep. No, it's 100. I mean, you said it absolutely. You nailed it. There's two things that I see happen all the time, and you touched on it. One is the rushing through
Yeah.
because we're in multitasking mode. We're just trying to
Hmm.
get stuff done. So we rush through, we don't build rapport, we don't create value, we don't hit the emotional triggers in a
Hmm.
buyer's mind. We all, maybe we don't all know this, but we should know this. People buy based on an emotional response and then they
Hmm.
justify it with logic. And too many
Yes.
times we lead with logic, like here's all the reasons you need to replace the system, but we're not hitting the emotional tug of
Hmm.
what's going to happen if you don't, right?
Hmm.
And so we miss those emotional connections. And when we miss emotional connections, people don't buy because, like you said, if they're confused, they don't do anything. I love Donald Miller. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a marketing made simple was the beginning of this company. Now it's business made simple. His famous phrase is, "If you confuse, you lose."
Mm.
It's absolutely true, right? So
Yeah.
so not setting the value, not creating the emotional connection, that's a huge miss. And then the follow-up, I cannot tell you how many times I've been the consumer on that side of a conversation.
Hmm.
We had a guy that came out and gave us a quote on a pool early
Yeah.
in the summer, spent all this time in the yard scoping it out. Do we ever hear from him again? Nope.
Mm-mm.
No,
Mm-mm.
not even a phone call, say, hey, you have any questions? What are you thinking?
Hmm.
Like no phone call, really?
Hmm.
So people are going to move on because that sends a message that you don't really need the business.
Mm-mm. Hmm. And then
Yeah.
we forget who came out here and who gave us the quote anyway,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the scenario we painted, though, I mean, there's no blame here. Like we all fall into this trap.
Yeah.
Founders are busy. We're putting out fires. We're trying to grow. We're trying to sell. We're doing all these other things.
That's
But now
right.
all of a sudden we have to have a process. And everybody tells us create processes so you can step out of that seat, work on your business, and other people can follow the process.
Yeah.
Because we need operating process here and sales process.
That's
But
right.
that just sounds exhausting. So
Yeah.
now
It doesn't, it's not very sexy either. Anytime you say
no.
process, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to
Right.
do that.
But how are we going to do that? Right. We don't have time to follow up on our quotes. So how are we going to have time to create a process?
Yeah.
We
No.
do. Help
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I mean, so again, well, let me talk about the lagging indicators here,
Okay. Yeah.
and then I'll talk about the process piece because I think there's something about process that's really key before we are going to invest the time in that. We
Hmm.
need to feel something that I think will come from these lagging indicators. So we talked about the leading indicators. So the lagging indicators would be your sales conversion rate just kind of falls
Mhm.
off a cliff, right? So for a while, as the owner of the business, you're probably out there and it feels like, man, I can't lose. I'm closing every deal, every person I talk to. There's a lot of energy. You got a lot of, passion, fire, and energy in your pitch and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, you notice that that just starts to fall off the cliff. So with that stress and anxiety we were talking about earlier, you start to push a little bit, whether that's conscious or subconscious. And so what happens is between the multitasking and now I'm a little bit stressed, our sales conversion falls off the cliff. So we see
Mhm.
sales conversion go down, top line revenue plateaus, it
Mhm.
just kind of stalls or sometimes it goes backwards. And so then the underlying feeling that you start to notice there is not anxiety and stress, but fear. Now it
Mhm.
translates to fear because it's like, uh-oh, what happens if,
Mhm.
this trend continues? Is
Mhm.
my business going to make it? Like you start having all those feelings. So I think the power of fear is that typically is a really strong motivator for us to kind of stop and go, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
And motivate the change in behavior that we need to make. And you talked about it. It's got to start with process. We have to actually design, build, and implement a sales process and a sales strategy. That's the next logical step. But too often, what happens is in the midst of the fear and the anxiety, the business owner just goes, I'm going to go hire somebody. I'm just going to go
Yep.
hire a
Yep.
salesperson. That's the answer. And it's not. Um,
Mhm.
and what they don't realize is how hard it is to make that leap. And one of the reasons it is so hard is because you have to have process and strategy first before you're going to even attract a good salesperson. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, that's the thing to think about with process is I'm not going to get the right person if I don't first focus on the process.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And you really hit on it with having like the indicators, the KPIs of what's really happening. So the power of fear, I was running this morning, and as I was running, I was listening to this podcast, and it was all about how, if you don't grow through a season in life, if you don't figure out, wait a minute, life is hard right now. What am I
Mm,
supposed to learn through this? How am I supposed to, get through? Then we're not going to get better. And so as I'm running, I'm listening to this podcast, and when you said, power of fears, it helps you to take a look and say, what do we need to change? And so I found myself saying, thank you, Lord, for
mm,
such and such season of life, because it's so easy to start getting stressed and anxiety of, wait a minute, sales are going down, but wait a minute. Thank you, Lord, because with sales down, I can slow down for a minute and I can see what's going wrong.
yep,
Let's fix it before it blows out of proportion and gets out of hand. And so that's something that just today, I'm just like, okay, thank you, Lord, for those seasons where we can say, all right, wait a minute, let's fix it. So, at the new flat rate, we're all about a process for sales. So we've got the sales process of the pricing, right?
yep,
Not
yeah,
all the wrench turning and all the different things, but the presentation, the proposal tool. All right.
yeah,
So there's still a process and script that you follow, but we do that proposal presentation tool of the pricing for you. So then that's one piece. And then I know that there's other partners like yours, right? Your company that can come in and can help. And so know that you don't have to do it all on your own. So how can we spin this forward? We've talked about, the indicators, the lagging, um, what's going on, and we know that we've got to create the process first. We've kind of got to get to a level where we're like, all right, we're going to step out of the full-time, the front sales
yeah,
role, and start not just throwing. I'm with you. I love how you said, so often we go and try to hire somebody to fix the problem, and it's not going to work.
yeah,
Right? It doesn't, because we have to fix everything else first. So now what?
yeah. So, well, the reason that hiring that very first salesperson is so difficult is number one, there is a transfer of trust that has to happen because as the founder, when we're talking to a customer and they know they're talking to the founder, automatically there's more trust there, right? Because they know they're talking to the business owner. Now we have to somehow transfer that trust to another person. And
Hmm.
so again, going back to what you were saying, Danielle, you got to have process to figure
Hmm.
that piece out. The process of delegation and how you do delegation in an effective way plays a huge role there. And so that transfer of trust, it's never going to be the same as it is for us as the founder. But we have to realize that even if we can get somebody to 80% of where we
Mm-hmm.
are and we're freed up to do the other things to grow the company, that's way better than us staying in that seat. So again,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a mindset shift there. But
Yeah.
so in addition to the transfer of trust that makes it difficult, good salespeople, I'm talking talented, experienced salespeople, if you're interviewing them to come to work for you, what they're doing the whole time you're talking is they're trying to calculate what their earnings potential is. And that's not to say that they're just all about money, because good salespeople are not just about the money, but money
Mm-hmm.
matters, and they're trying to figure out how much can I make here. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way that they figure that out in their mind is what kind of infrastructure exists in this business to support me as a salesperson? What's the go-to-market strategy? What's the marketing strategy? What kind of lead flow do we have here? What kind of tools do I have at my disposal to help me close the deal? How much is the owner going to be able to, work with me on that, or other people on the team? So these are all things going on in the back of their head as they're deciding whether to come to work for you. And if any of those areas have big gaps in them, they go, I can't, this isn't going to work for me, so I'm moving on. So what happens is you can't really attract those super talented salespeople. And so what happens is you go find someone that's younger and inexperienced who doesn't know all that. And now
Mm-hmm.
they got to learn, right? Now you're going to
Yeah.
pay to send them to school selling in your business. And there's a cost that comes with that, believe me. And then,
Yes.
or you're going to find someone who goes, oh yeah, I'm willing to work for 100% commission.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, you tell me the answer to this. What truly good salesperson is willing to work for free? For
Mm-hmm.
just commissions. I mean, there's some industries where that's okay, like real estate, right?
Yeah.
But not in most businesses is that where you're going to find a really talented person willing to work for nothing unless they close something.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do find that person, the fact that they don't make money until they close something means that they're not going to care about getting the right customer. They're just going to care about closing the deal, and they might get
Mm-hmm.
the wrong customer, right? Which is even
Yeah.
worse. So
Yeah.
those are yeah, I'm riffing a little bit here with you, but those are the big challenges around that first sales hire. And I think it's just good for owners to go into that eyes wide open and understand
Yeah.
where the gaps are that they need to close before they take that leap.
I like that you say that, Steve. And I think it's great to talk to people about, hey, how do you sell? How do you pay your salespeople, right? To get ideas and all of that. I'm in a Vistage group. Do you know what Vistage is?
I'm in Vistage as well. Yeah.
Oh, you are? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's a CEO peer advisory group, and
Yeah.
it's all different kinds of business owners, and it's global, right? And so
Yeah.
very cool. So I'm in one in Atlanta, and I remember we were in one meeting one time, and this one of the other members in there had a very large marketing company, an M&A background, and he gets up in all of our faces and everybody. We were talking about hiring salespeople. He's like, "None of you here, none of you can actually afford an A player. None of you can afford an A superstar salesperson." He's like, so quit with that stupid commission only and all this stuff and all these low base salaries. Like, none of you can afford the people that you need. So get your butt down to the bank, get some money, and start hiring who you need to grow. Like, oh my gosh. So I got out of that meeting and I was like, I've got the answers, right? And I called my CFO. I was like, hey, you'll never believe, what they just said. I'm gonna go to the bank and get all this money and I'm gonna go hire the. And my CFO was like, no, you can't do that. But I'm like, this is how we grow. And the CFO was like, no, you can't.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that nothing stresses out the CFO more than that conversation.
I was like, okay, so then maybe we need a few more conversations to find out what is the right balance. And then you test these things, right? You test different pay scales with your team and you ask, because I remember interviewing some people from they call them Teslainaires, right? People that work for Tesla that have stock. So all these employees are all Teslainaires, right? They've
Yeah.
got all this stock. They've been there for a long time. And so this one girl comes in and interviews, and she was from an Atlanta dealership. And when she told me her base and then she wanted to come work for us, I was like, are you joking right now? Like, are you joking right now? You want to jump ship. You are bat crazy. I was like,
Right.
no, because it was an incredible plan. I was like, I could never match that, right? But I love that it busted me through that glass ceiling of, wait a minute, these high achievers, they are up here and we can have a growth pathway for that. Doesn't mean that
Yes.
we can't have high achievers on our team. It's a growth pathway. And so we need to be thinking about growth pathways and how we can get people. I love when you said the transfer of knowledge. You got a founder that's like, all right, I can't be selling forever, but what do I do? You start finding, I mean, not entry level, but somebody that wants to get into sales, that wants to get into the industry. And then all of a sudden they're your helper and they're with you all the time. And shoot, give them the clipboard to write the processes. And so
Yeah.
if you don't have time to write the process, then you got your helper in the truck with you. And it doesn't have to be a technical helper, it can be the sales helper. And
Yeah.
they're riding along with you and you're transferring this knowledge and they're writing the manual and the processes for how to do it as they're learning with you because
Yeah.
it works so well in the sales support role in an office. We're selling software. And so when we've got that sales support person that's learning, that's booking demos, that's prospecting, and they're listening to the sales reps, they are the perfect stepping stone to move into the sales rep role, right?
That's
And
right.
I know that it's like that. It can be like that in so many positions when we look at it as, wait a minute, let's have some growth pathways for people where they have a starting point, but they know this is where the next step is. So let's learn all these things, and this is where I'm going.
Yeah, that's great. And you just touched on that kind of delegation framework piece a little
Mhm.
bit. So I'll unpack that, in the interest of, being practical, right, for the
Yeah.
audience. So this is how we train the founders we work with to onboard the salesperson that we bring into the business for them. And it's basically really simple. It's you do. So I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to do it and you're going to watch. So I'm the founder,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
I'm going to do it. You're going to watch. And we're going to do that for a season until you say, okay, I think I'm ready to do it together. Then we're going to go into a season of we're going to do it together. So we're going to tag team in
Mm-hmm.
these conversations. So sometimes you're going to take the lead, sometimes I'm going to take the lead, and we're going to kind of find a tag teaming rhythm. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to say, as the salesperson, oh, I think I got this. Let me do it and you watch me. So now it transitions to you do and I watch. And I'm giving feedback, right? Real time feedback
Mm-hmm.
as you're doing it, and then you're getting better. And then eventually it goes, now you do it. And so
Mm-hmm.
then I've released you now to go do it, to go sell based on all the time we spent doing it together. But I'm still going to stay involved as a founder in giving feedback and
Mm-hmm.
being there to coach and mentor. The guy that does sales for us at Altezza, he and I still have a monthly meeting that's just about improvement,
Yeah.
sharpening the sword in terms of the sales skills.
Yes.
He's great. He's doing awesome. But I don't ever let go of that kind of mentorship role.
Right.
So
Right.
that's how you do it, and that works in sales and it works in other roles as well, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what Altezza Solutions does in a fractional capacity? So for our audience or any audience, how do you guys work with a company?
Yeah, thanks. The first and foremost, one of the things you were talking about was these high performing salespeople and how hard it is to hire them
Mm-hmm.
just from a compensation standpoint. But that you should aspire to try to get to the place where you can afford to hire those people. So
Yes.
think of Altezza as this really cool bridge to get you there. Because what we're going to be doing with our customers is we bring that super talented salesperson that,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever variety of reasons, are in a stage of life where they've said, I don't want to do sales for one company anymore. They're typically very passionate about helping small businesses grow, so that they've kind of internalized our mission to help
Mm-hmm.
give these small business owners freedom. But they've got the chops to be getting paid, 200,000 a year
Yeah.
plus. They've chose to make money a different way. So we
Mm-hmm.
bring those people into the business. And so you're getting this incredibly talented, gifted, seasoned salesperson, but because they're only working 10 to 15 hours a week, you're not paying the full-time salary to get them.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be the first step to start with that whole process of, building the process, learning how to transfer trust, building all the kind of the rails, the sales rails that will then serve you well when that person's ready to step out and you're ready to
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and bring in the full-time talented salesperson.
Very cool.
So that's the high level look at what we do. In terms of
Yeah.
how we do it, if you want me to dig into that a little bit more, some of the detail of what that looks like.
Well, I mainly wanted to come back and say that everybody should talk to Steve and his team and consider If you're wondering how could you outsource sales to a trusted company that actually could be an extension of your company and to help you guys grow and get to the next level, this there it'd be worth a conversation.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. And here's one thing I can say 100% is we will never sell somebody on the idea of Altezza or fractional sales being right unless we
Mhm.
know that it's right. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand the business situation first.
Mhm.
And if we decide, you know what, fractional probably doesn't work, then we'll coach and give guidance and advice in other ways to try to be helpful.
That's great. I know it's scary. It's scary to let go of the reins in different areas of your business,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when it comes to revenue. Like, how can somebody else sell the product as good as me? And it's easy to think that nobody will ever be as good as the founder. Somebody on our, we had a phone call come in, and I answered it outside of my office one day. We've got a lobby out here, in a lobby bar, and I walked by, and everybody was at lunch. There's nobody in the building, and so I answered the phone at the bar and have a conversation with this person. And of course, all calls are always being recorded. And so it was like, so then afterwards, I asked my team, I was like, hey, send me that recording. And then I had a scheduled a team training and I pushed play. And another mentor of mine, Ted Miller the third, talks about, when it comes to sales, don't role play, press play. And I
Uh,
and I love that. Don't role play, press play. And
yeah.
so, and I press play all the time on the team. Like, we're always listening to their calls in front of everybody so that we can learn together. And hey, you gotta listen to mine sometimes too. And this was a
Yeah.
great opportunity for it. So we push play and everybody listens. It was 12 minutes long and I had them all write down afterwards. And I said, okay, guys, go ahead and critique. Like, what did we learn from that? Like, we're not trying to throw daggers. I don't want daggers thrown at me, but what can we learn from that conversation? And one of the team members said, well, Danielle, you were the perfect person to answer that call. I was like, oh, no, no, no. No, like, I'm the last person that should have answered that call because I didn't like nothing that was said. And I know this person was trying to compliment, but I did not need to answer that call. Anybody on the team should have been well equipped and ready. And so much of it came back to empathy and listening and then, more things, right? So it's going back to the basics. And I feel like I'm kind of rat trailing here. What was the point? Oh, the point is, it's so hard to let go of revenue and of sales and to
Yeah.
grow. But then we got to go back and we got to listen and continue to train. And so you're never letting go all the way. You let somebody else
Right.
sit in that role, but you're still training. And then
Yeah.
3 years later, you're like, oh, I thought we trained on that. Oh yeah, we need to train again. And
Yeah.
so it's continually, you're always involved because you're always helping to train and to move it up to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. There's a principle I talk about. It's called delegate, don't abdicate,
Mm,
right? So many times if the owner really doesn't like sales, like they're doing it out of necessity, but they really kind of hate it,
yeah.
what'll happen is they'll hire the salesperson and they'll be like, "Oh, thank God, I'm out. Like
Hmm.
now I don't have to do this anymore. I'm going to go do whatever it is they love." Right. And that's a deadly mistake that we don't want to make because then
Hmm.
you basically turn the salesperson loose to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. So yeah, that delegation process is super important. And then understanding, like you said, that the training and the mentorship, that
Hmm.
doesn't go away. We always need to be doing that.
Hmm.
Even with people who've been there for a long time, because people kind of get set in their ways sometimes and need a little bit of a wake up call, a little, shake things up. So
Totally, they do.
yeah. Yeah, but that's our job as a visionary leader, right? That's the kind of
Yes.
stuff we should be doing.
Yes. And once we start doing it, it's fun.
Yeah.
Steve, I want to end on two things. Definitely one, how can people get in touch with you? How can they reach out to your company to learn more? And then the other is would love to hear you say something on work life family balance. I know a little bit, not much about you, but you're a family man. And I know so many in our world, it's stressful. People are working all the time trying to take care of the families. And especially in our industry, I mean, these guys are slaving away to provide for their families, and then they're not ever home. And
Yeah.
so, what have you found that in your absence can still help bring your family together, if anything, and how can people reach you?
Yeah, well, so in terms of reaching Altezza, we can maybe share the URL. You can put it in the show notes or whatever,
Got it.
altezzasolutions.com. That's our website. if you want to connect with me personally, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm pretty active there. So look for me on LinkedIn. There's not a lot of Catons out there on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty easy to find. So yeah, I would love to connect with people on LinkedIn. Yeah, work-life balance. So that one, here's what I remember me talking about the calendar early in the
Mm,
conversation. That tipped you off a little bit that if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't happen. It's just sort of
mm,
the reality that I think a lot of us live in.
yeah.
So I have to actually create blocks of time for the things that really matter to me. And my family and time with my wife is in that category. So I've got to put it on the calendar or create space for that to happen. So there's things like the occasional, like taking off early on Friday to go start a date night with my wife. There's just
Hmm.
margin in my calendar for more of the spontaneous stuff.
Hmm.
But then when it comes to like truly unplugging and getting away from the grind, I
Hmm.
literally have to plan that about a year in advance and put it on the calendar and then
Yeah.
make sure nothing blows it up. Like I have to really be disciplined about not letting something interrupt that.
Hmm.
But I have to plan it way in advance or it won't happen, you know. So
Hmm.
that's how I've been able to do it.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think so often we just react to life and then all of a sudden we wonder why the communication is not good at home. It's because we've
Yeah.
just all been reacting instead of, it's hard for some of us that aren't planners to really think ahead and to pre-plan. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I had a pastor that told me years ago. He gave me this piece of advice that it was brilliant. I'll love to share it. And it was I think it was the 3D. So it was dialogue daily. This is really in the context of your marriage.
Hmm.
Dialogue daily, date weekly, depart monthly.
Mm, I like it.
And the depart doesn't have to be go on vacation. It just means you get
Hmm.
away, even if it's just, for the day, going to the mountains
Hmm.
and hiking, or something. But that discipline of every day talking to each other about something other than work and the
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
and then the date nights, and then the depart that to me, I've been married almost 30 years, and I know for a fact it's because of that discipline.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Steve, it's
Yeah,
awesome
man.
to have you on here. So glad to get to know you a little bit better. Thanks for sharing with everybody listening. Appreciate you. And I can't wait to share this episode with everybody.
It's been a pleasure, Danielle. Thank you so much.
If you want to learn more about the new flat rate, go to thenewflatrate.com. If you want to learn more about Altezza Solutions, go to altezzasolutions.com. Lastly, don't forget to check out Steve on his LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/C Caton.